Jordan Belfort. You probably know him as the Wolf of Wall Street. This is a guy who built a financial empire on pure lies, lived a life of excess that most of us can't even imagine, and then, get this, after it all came crashing down, he sold the story and made millions more. I mean, how does that even happen?
Okay, let's just get the facts straight, right out of the gate. He masterminded a scam that stole hundreds of millions of dollars from ordinary people. He was looking at 30 years behind bars. But after cutting a deal, he served just 22 months. And we're not talking some high-security prison here. This was a place they called Camp Fed, where he was literally playing tennis.
And that right there, that's the central mystery, isn't it? The movie turned him into a legend, a kind of anti-hero for the financial world. So how did a man who ruined thousands of lives become this celebrated icon? Well, that's the question we're tackling today.
So first, we really need to separate the Hollywood fantasy from the gritty reality, because the gap between the myth and the man, well, that's where the real story lies.
That blockbuster movie from Martin Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio, it totally cemented his legend. Now, it's a cinematic masterpiece, but you gotta remember, it tells the story from his perspective. We get the thrill of the con, the wild parties, the mountains of cash. And the victims? Well, they kind of become faceless extras in his story.
But to really understand the Wolf, we have to go back, way back, before he ever even set foot on Wall Street. Because the instincts, the ambition, his whole philosophy, it was all forged much, much earlier.
The drive was always there. It's kind of crazy. At just 16 years old, he pulled in $20,000 in one summer just selling Italian ices. He got into dental school but walked out on day one, literally day one, because the dean said dentistry wasn't the path to getting super rich. Then he tried selling meat and seafood door to door, and it failed, spectacularly.
And right there, surrounded by the literal wreckage of his business, he had the revelation that would define his entire life. He realized his mistake wasn't the business model, it was his focus. He'd been trying to sell meat. The epiphany? The product is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is the sale. And that idea became his superpower.
So, armed with this new philosophy, he turned his sights to Wall Street. Not the prestigious established Wall Street, but its grimy, unregulated basement. He was ready to build his kingdom.
And down there, he found his gold mine, penny stocks. You gotta understand, this was the Wild West of the financial world. Tiny, often worthless companies traded over the counter, not on the big exchanges. All the established firms wouldn't go near them, which meant it was an unregulated free-for-all.
And this right here is the key to the whole operation. A typical broker on Wall Street makes, what, a 1 or 2% commission? But on these penny stocks, the commission was 50%. 50. Think about that. The exact same sales skills applied to a different product could make him exponentially richer. It wasn't just an opportunity, it was a gold rush.
So he created Stratton Oakmont. The name was designed to sound old, established, and trustworthy. But the reality? Oh, man. It was a chaotic boiler room in a Long Island strip mall staffed by his old neighborhood friends, college dropouts, and pretty much anyone who was hungry and could talk fast.
And this was their entire business model, the classic pump and dump. First, Belfort and his inner circle would secretly buy up huge amounts of a worthless stock for pennies. Second, his army of brokers would hit the phones, creating a frenzy of fake hype. Third, as unsuspecting investors bought in and drove the price up, Stratton would dump all of their shares at the peak. And finally, the stock would crash, leaving his customers with nothing.
The money started pouring in, and with it came a culture of depravity that has become legendary. This wasn't just a business anymore. It was basically a cult of greed.
The stories are infamous for a reason. We're talking about dwarf tossing contests in the office, strippers paid for on the company card, and enough drugs to tranquilize an army. Belfort himself bought mansions, sports cars, a helicopter, and a 167-foot yacht he named after his wife Naomi.
But underneath all the champagne and cocaine, the whole operation was rotting from the inside. The drug use spiraled from a party favor into a necessity, and Belfort was desperately trying to hide the money, smuggling cash to Swiss bank accounts using relatives and couriers.
An empire built this recklessly just can't last forever. And sure enough, the law started to notice. The party was coming to a very abrupt end.
The cracks started to show in '94, when the SEC began sniffing around. Then, in '96, in a moment that was almost too perfect a metaphor, Belfort insisted on sailing his yacht into a Mediterranean storm and sank it.
A few months after he was rescued by the Italian Navy, the FBI raided his offices. But the final, fatal arrow came a year later. While he was already under federal investigation, he tried to smuggle one last $2 million into a Swiss bank. And that was it. The game was up.
So, the scam was over. But this is where the story takes its most unbelievable turn. Because for Jordan Belfort, getting caught was just the beginning of his next big sale.
This slide tells the whole story. To save himself, he turned on everyone. He wore a wire, betrayed his closest friends, and gave up his entire operation. And the reward for this cooperation? His 30-year sentence just melted away to 22 months. And his victims, the people whose trust he'd cultivated, they were left with nothing. Their retirement accounts emptied, their kids' college funds gone, their futures just destroyed.
The court ordered him to pay back $110 million to the more than 1,500 people he defrauded, a staggering sum meant to make things right.
But here's the punchline. To this day, he's paid back only a tiny fraction of it. The rest of the money vanished into a maze of legal and financial maneuvers. His victims got almost nothing, while Belfort went on to build a new fortune.
So how did he build that new fortune? By pulling off his most audacious sale yet. While in prison, his cellmate, and you can't make this up, was Tommy Chong of Cheech and Chong fame, who told him he had to write down his insane stories. So Belfort didn't just do his time, he used it to package his crimes into a product.
He turned his criminal enterprise into a best-selling memoir, which became that blockbuster film. Today he's a motivational speaker, charging fortunes to teach sales techniques. He took the nickname The Wolf, which was meant as an insult in a magazine article, and turned it into his brand. He successfully sold his own infamy.
And that brings us right back to the question we started with. Why do we still cheer for this guy? Belfort himself once said, "The only thing I was guilty of was being greedy." And maybe that's the uncomfortable answer. Maybe we're fascinated by the Wolf of Wall Street, not because we want to see him punished, but because some small part of us wants to be him.